Ladies and gentlemen, we now come to a very special moment in the summit, which is the announcement of this year's Sustainable Development Leadership Award. Now, this was instituted by TERI in 2005 as a way of honoring eminent individuals engaged in encouraging global initiatives that can lead the world towards a sustainable future. Now, the recipient of this year's award receives it in recognition for his pioneering efforts to decarbonize the European economy and to promote renewable energy and energy efficiency. As President of the European Commission, he spearheaded the first internationally legally binding agreement for curbing greenhouse gas emissions in the form of the historic 2020 package on climate and energy. And during his second term, he took this further, introducing new and more ambitious targets and extending the commitments until 2030. His leadership and ideas have not only helped Europe cut carbon, but also unleashed a wave of innovation on renewables and energy efficiency, which have spread ripples worldwide. The recipient of this year's Sustainable Development Leadership Award is Dr. José Manuel Durão Barroso. And to present the award, I would like to invite Dr. Pachauri and Suresh Prabhu, the Hon'ble Minister for Railways. Thank you.
Dr. Pachauri, dear friend, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed an honor to receive this Sustainable Development Leadership Award 2015 by TERI. Special word of thanks to Dr. Pachauri. Thanks also for its incredible leadership. I know that in the beginning of this conference, you was called by Governor Schwarzenegger a real man of action. Let's hope that Dr. Pachauri will be, with many of those present here, one of the real terminators of climate change in the world. Here in Delhi, capital of India, a country of such great history and civilization, a vibrant democracy, a country where today we feel a renewed sense of dynamism, of commitment and enthusiasm towards growth and development, I think it's very appropriate that we build this momentum for the success of the conference in Paris. I accept this distinction you are giving me as a recognition of the work done by the European Commission. I had the honor to lead during the last 10 years, 2 mandates from 2004 to 2009 and from 2009 to 2014. During my first mandate, we have presented in 2007 the climate and energy package that remains known as the 20-20-20 package, with a commitment of reduction of greenhouse gas of 20% in 2020 compared to 1990, 20% of energy efficiency gains, and 20% of use of renewables as part of our energy mix. I'm very happy that today we can say that the European Union is on track to reach these targets. This was the most ambitious climate plan adopted by any group of countries, and in fact the first international binding agreement for curbing energy emissions, with legally binding targets enforceable by legislation and accepted by all the member states of the European Union. And more recently, already in 2004, the European Commission was able to negotiate with all our member states a new and even more ambitious package known as the Climate and Energy Framework. Indeed, I was happy that it was exactly in the last European Council the summit of heads of state and government in which I participated in October, that this agreement was possible. This agreement is even more ambitious because the heads of state and government of the European Union have committed to a reduction of greenhouse gases of at least 40% from 1990 to 2030. This will keep us on track in Europe for an almost complete decarbonization of our economies by 2050. Important goals were also set for energy efficiency and for renewables. Once again, the European Union has shown its ambition in tackling climate change, and the European Union kept its position of leadership. And many have asked us, how was this possible? How was it possible to have the agreement of countries with so different patterns of energy as we have in Europe? 28 countries today in Europe, European Union. Countries, some of them with very much dependent on fossil fuels, some very dependent on nuclear, others against nuclear, some with a great input of renewables, others not so much in renewables, some with a great awareness of the climate change issues, some, to be honest, not so much. So how is it possible to unite them around common goals and legally binding goals? It was not easy, I have to say to you. There was, at some moments, extremely polarized debates, namely between, let's simplify it, the green constituency, the industry constituency. And there was very strong resistance. For instance, I could mention many, but the CO2 emissions for cars legislation, with very polarized debates. But at the end, it was possible to come to an agreement. And I think it was especially important to note that after the financial crisis that has hit Europe so hard, when, of course, the public opinion was much more committed and interested in economic growth, concerned with unemployment, and also with financial instability, during that period, of course, less attention was given to climate change, and climate change was relegated to a second level of priority compared to the more urgent, at least apparently urgent, needs of the fight against unemployment and growth, and the fight for growth. So we had a problem. But as you know, sometimes when you have a problem, the best way to solve it is to enlarge it. That's why, instead of having, in 2007 or in 2014, only a package for climate change, only a package for environment, we have enlarged it, namely for energy and energy security, including security of supply. The truth is that some of our member states were not so concerned with the priority of climate change as they were with the need to assure security of supply of energy. And I'm sure they were right in that concern, as the future has demonstrated. So that's why we have enlarged the goal of the package to include, yes, environmental goals in terms of the fight against climate change, but energy policy goals, especially on security of supply, and also some mechanisms to drive growth, namely a greener form of growth. Because if not, if we don't win the argument that the fight against climate change can also be a driver for growth, of course, we will not gain the necessary support for the fight against climate policy. And so, as we have seen, it happens sometimes that when you have a larger than a smaller problem, it can become easier to find a consensus, because some of the partners that were not completely happy with a part of the package could find adequate compensation in others. I believe that is also the same way we should go for Paris. Not with the less common denominator, but with ambition. I believe it can be easier to find an agreement in Paris if we have a broader ambition. And indeed, that's the way the things are evolving in the global conversation about climate change, as we have seen in recent events, namely in the conference organized by Ban Ki-moon in the United Nations in September. Let's be frank. In the world today, some of our countries do not see the urgency as others. If you ask the situation to the small island states of the Pacific or the Indian Ocean, if you ask the countries in Africa affected by desertification, they understand how existential, how dramatic this issue is. But there are some countries that perceive the agenda on climate change, specifically the need for having binding targets, as some kind of threat or challenge to the goals of their industrialization or to the goals of their growth. So we really need to put to debate showing that this is a way to promote a greener form of growth. And this is the only way, I believe, linking the concerns of the environment, so existential, to the concerns of growth, that we can reach a consensus, namely the need to fight poverty and absolute poverty that we still have in many parts of the world. That's why the issue is about sustainability, sustainable growth, an agenda that in Europe we are now also promoting through the resource efficiency agenda, the sustainable consumption and production, because sustainable production and consumption has been, in fact, a policy of the European Union since the launch in 2008 of the SCP, Sustainable Production, Consumption and Production Action Plan. And it includes key pieces of legislation, eco-design, energy labeling directive, eco-label, but also voluntary actions like green public procurement, retail forum, environmental technology verification, which are indeed creating new opportunities for business. Business that can promote growth and can promote jobs. So, to have a global, ambitious, and I hope, binding agreement in Paris, we have now to seize the momentum. The commitment of France, as was just today demonstrated here, is beyond doubt. The commitment of Europe is also present. But you know, the European Union is responsible for around 11% of global emissions, so we need the big emitters to do their contribution. I welcome the recent announcements made by the United States of America and by China. They are certainly steps in the right direction. I know that you in India are also making a great effort in this regard. I particularly want to welcome the plans that I know are now being developed in terms of railways for this country, because it's such an important issue and such an important sector, the sector of transport and transportation in general, to achieve this sustainability in our growth. So a global agreement is within reach. I was in '92 in Rio. I was in 2002 in Johannesburg. I was in 2012 again in Rio. But I was also in Copenhagen, and I remember the frustration that we felt there, because in spite of all the efforts of so many, in the governments, in the NGOs, and in the host country, it was not possible to come to an agreement. I feel that now the situation is becoming mature, and that Paris can be indeed the moment for a global commitment that is in the interest of our planet, the interest of the future generations. And let me conclude by saying, a commitment and an agreement that we need, because indeed we are today living in a very dangerous, unpredictable, and unstable world. And I think a global commitment to fight climate change could be a great positive signal and a lesson that the world, for once, can unite around a common concern, a common goal, the common future of our planet, the common commitment to sustainable growth. I thank you for your attention, and I thank you for the distinction you gave to the European Union.